Give two people the exact same baseline skills, resources, and task. One executes it fluidly, the other hesitates and fails. When organizations encounter this performance gap, they usually default to a standard playbook. They try to boost global morale. They operate on the assumption that if an employee feels better about themselves overall, they will execute complex tasks more effectively. This approach confuses two very different psychological concepts. What organizations are trying to raise is self-esteem, which the literature defines as a broad trait reflecting an individual's characteristic affective evaluation of the self. It is a global feeling of self-worth. But global feelings of self-worth do not drive task-based performance. That mechanism is self-efficacy. Unlike the diffuse aura of self-esteem, self-efficacy is a highly localized, domain-specific cognitive calculation. A person can have low overall self-esteem, yet possess sky-high self-efficacy for a specific technical skill, like coding or public speaking. To actually improve human performance, organizations need to stop trying to make people feel globally good. Instead, they need to understand the precise mechanics of how individuals calculate their own situational confidence. Self-efficacy operates as a real-time prediction. It is an individual's internal estimate of what researchers call their orchestration capacity. Orchestration capacity is the ability to mobilize the specific motivation, cognitive resources, and courses of action required to meet a given situational demand. It is an active assessment of what it will take to get a specific job done and whether you have the tools to do it. Because this is a dynamic judgment rather than an inborn personality trait, it is highly malleable. It constantly shifts as an individual acquires new information and experiences. Self-efficacy operates as an internal mathematical equation. By mapping the exact cognitive architecture of how people weigh these variables, we can systematically rewrite the output. Confidence is a rigorous, ongoing system of data processing, a self-fulfilling prophecy built on specific cognitive inputs. To run this internal equation, the human mind requires raw data. According to the foundational framework established by Bandura, this data comes from exactly 4 distinct feeds. The first is inactive mastery, or previous first-hand experience. Statistically, actually doing the task successfully in the past provides the strongest and most reliable data point for future efficacy. The second feed is vicarious experience, or modeling. By watching a peer succeed or fail at a task, an individual can approximate the amount of effort versus skill they themselves will need to produce a comparable performance. The third feed is verbal persuasion and feedback. Its impact on the calculation relies heavily on the credibility, expertise, and trustworthiness of the person delivering the message. Finally, there is physiological arousal. Individuals judge their anticipated performance based on their physical and emotional states. A racing heart could be processed as paralyzing anxiety, or it could be processed as energizing enthusiasm, depending entirely on the context. These 4 inputs do not dictate confidence on their own. They are merely the unorganized raw data that must now enter the individual's cognitive processing engine. To form a final judgment of capability, the individual's brain must cross-reference external demands against their own internal history. This flowchart illustrates the cognitive model developed by researchers Marilyn Gist and Terence Mitchell. It shows exactly how those 4 data feeds are parsed. The first processing node is the analysis of task requirements. The brain examines the new challenge and makes inferences about what it takes to perform well. It estimates necessary analytical skills, the time required, and even physical risks. Simultaneously, the brain runs a second process, the attributional analysis of experience. Here, the individual evaluates why a past performance level occurred. They ask themselves, did I succeed last time because the task was easy or because I worked hard? Did I fail due to bad luck or a lack of innate ability? These 2 analytical streams, the demands of the new task and the perceived causes of past performance, converge. The synthesis of this data produces the final estimation of orchestration capacity. Self-efficacy drops when the internal processor determines that past causes of failure are likely to repeat in the current environment, regardless of the task's objective difficulty. To understand exactly how that attribution process works, we have to look closely at the specific variables individuals weigh when judging their past performance. This matrix categorizes the cues that influence efficacy based on two major dimensions: causality and controllability. The horizontal axis represents the locus of the determinant. This splits the factors into external determinants, things primarily under the organization's or environment's control, and internal determinants, which are primarily under personal control. The vertical axis measures variability. This distinguishes between factors that are low variability, meaning they are stable and highly resistant to change, and factors with high variability, meaning they are dynamic and fluctuate easily. We can map specific traits onto this grid. Baseline ability sits in the top right. It is internal, but highly stable and hard to change quickly. Contrast that with effort in the bottom right. It is also internal, but highly variable. You can choose to try harder right now. Looking at the external column, task complexity is a low variability constraint. The job is exactly as hard as it is. But environmental factors like distractions or risk are high variability. They change day to day. The critical psychological rule here is controllability. Individuals perceive much greater control over highly variable determinants, like their immediate effort or mood, than they do over low variability determinants, like their innate talent or fixed organizational resources. If an employee attributes a past failure to a low variability factor, like innate ability, their efficacy permanently crashes. If they attribute it to a high variability factor, like effort, their efficacy remains resilient because they believe they have the power to change the outcome next time. Consider two budget analysts facing intensive preparation for an upcoming fiscal year forecast. Right now, both analysts exhibit terribly low self-efficacy for this specific task. Standard HR practices would treat both analysts identically, likely offering a generic motivational seminar or a basic pep talk. This chart breaks down the composition of their low self-efficacy. For individual A, the internal math looks like this. She attributes her potential failure to limited technical skills, an internal, highly stable factor. Because her internal calculation views this deficit as 80% stable, she feels completely helpless to change it. Now look at individual B. He actually knows he possesses excellent technical skills. His low efficacy stems from being overwhelmed by his current workload and anticipating that managers will be late providing the data he needs. He attributes his potential failure to external, highly variable factors like distractions and time constraints. His perceived deficit is 70% variable. Two identical scores of low confidence are masking two completely different cognitive calculations. Treating them as the exact same problem guarantees the intervention will fail for at least one of them. The extent to which self-efficacy can be raised depends entirely on matching the intervention strategy to the specific limiting determinant holding the person back. If an individual's efficacy is bottlenecked by internal, stable factors, like our first analyst lacking technical knowledge, pep talks achieve nothing. The only solution is to provide direct ability training, simulations, and behavioral modeling to force enactive mastery. But if an individual's efficacy is bottlenecked by variable factors, like our second analyst facing workload distractions, technical training is useless. The intervention must take the form of counseling on psychological performance strategies, such as goal setting, distraction management, or workflow redesign. This flowchart shows how targeted interventions dictate downstream behavior. The revised estimation directly alters the employee's goal level, their persistence, and ultimately their actual performance. You cannot motivate an employee who lacks the baseline skills, and you cannot train an employee whose environment prevents them from exerting effort. Efficacy dictates exactly which lever management must pull. The processing engine features one final continuous step, the feedback loop. Once performance occurs, the outcome immediately becomes new raw data that feeds straight back into the system. Existing efficacy colors exactly how this feedback is interpreted. People with high self-efficacy attribute their failures to insufficient effort, a highly variable factor they can fix. People with low self-efficacy attribute failure to a lack of ability, a stable factor they feel powerless to change. This creates a dangerous exacerbation cycle. When an employee with low efficacy fails, their belief that they lack stable ability is confirmed. This causes them to exert less effort on the next attempt, which practically guarantees further failure. Managerial feedback breaks this cycle by providing accurate, specific information about the true causes of performance, correcting the employee's faulty internal attributions. Self-efficacy is an image matching process between situational demands and internal resources. Leaders who treat confidence as an active, continuous calculation can systematically engineer sustained resilience and elite performance across their entire organization.